Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of Surviving, Persevering, and Overcoming. And this is our second poem, If, by Rudyard Kipling. And we're going to do 3 reads of our poem. And the first one, we'll get our first impressions. And then the next one, we will analyze. And then the third one, you'll get a chance to read through, put it all together, and analyze yourself. Now, let's just go ahead and do our first read through. And just first impression. So, If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubtings too. If you can wait and not be tired of waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give way to hating. And yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose, and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. So we could pick up that it is a poem about advice. And then here at the bottom, we see that it's advice to a son. And so If was written by Rudyard Kipling around 1895. It is in the form of paternal advice to the poet's son, John. And so, if Kipling sounds like a familiar name, he wrote The Jungle Book. He also wrote a sequel to The Jungle Book and other novels that are in the public domain. If you want to choose those for some independent reading, and 1895, very old timey. So we are in the Victorian era, and so Kipling also said that he was inspired by Leander Jameson, who was passionate about his causes. He was passionate about British imperialism, so maybe we might disagree with his philosophy, but yet he often, with his passion, maybe even, made a heap of all of his winnings and risked it all at once. He had a raid that he led in South Africa, which went very wrong. And he had to actually be taken back to England and put on trial for what he did. And he never lost his passion and he always believed in his cause. And even after that big debacle, he was able to keep his political career, and he just never said that he was going to give up. And so he was inspired by that sort of character. So might not believe in the philosophy, but we can admire the character of him. This English poem and others like Invictus by Henley show some of the Victorian era Stoicism. So the sort of Greek philosophy of not showing your emotions and not feeling anything when things come your way, or the stiff upper lip that characterizes British grit and self-discipline. I put the word grit in there because, kind of give a little bit of the American sort of version of this, that old cowboy western like grit. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and stop, complaining and get it done, right? And so kind of like that idea. And we can see that throughout the poem that the writer wishes that his son had that sort of characteristic. And so let's first talk about the form and structure, and then we'll go into the meaning of each stanza. So, if and then we have an M dash there. So hyphens are the small versions of M dashes, and hyphens are used to put two words together. Like if I said hardworking and I was using it as one word, then it would be with a hyphen. But an M dash is used, like you can see them right here and down here, kind of like where you would use perhaps a parentheses. You're adding in a piece of information that's usually a clause. It's a little bit more information. It's not necessary to the understanding of the sentence. And you want it to visually stand a little bit outside of the structure of the sentence to make a point. And so you can use an M dash, which generally, like with a word processor, can be done with two hyphens together. And so this is almost as if he's saying if, and then he has a thought. And this is the entire thought that ends with, you'll be a man, my son. It's like he's saying, if all of these things, not one or two, but if all of these things, you'll be a man, my son. And so you'll see that this whole poem is one sentence, and really it begins here with the title and ends with the actual statement, the actual sentence. These are all kind of like clauses standing together and strung together, and then this is the actual sentence, you'll be a man, my son. And so we do have one piece of punctuation right there if you caught it and you wanted to argue with me about it, but it is inside of quotes, so it's kind of like saying that it is a sentence within a sentence. So really this whole poem is one thought, one sentence. And the idea of this is what a man is, and so it's the definition to Kipling of what is man. And so all of these things have to be put together to equal that. It's not just one or two. And this is, it has the same rhyme scheme in all of the paragraphs. And it also is in iambic pentameter, which is what Shakespeare liked to use in many areas of his poems. And it makes it conversational, or it makes it easier to remember. And I'll kind of show you what I mean by that, because it has like, if you can keep your head when all about you. That's almost like 5.5 lines, but like unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed. So it gives this sort of a sing-song quality to the poem and makes it seem like it's a conversation. And it also makes it not feel so harsh because all of the syllables are equal. And then let's go ahead and move on to what is it about. So, first stanza. Now, if you can keep your head, stay calm when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. So, can you stay calm not only when everyone else is going crazy, but when they're like pointing their finger at you and saying your fault? Can you stay calm and, and make the situation work? Now, I feel like this is you in relation to others. And so he's saying when all about you are losing their heads. And then this kind of comes into play in the next two sections, because we have three if statements in this first stanza. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowances for their doubtings too. So again, it's you in relation to other people. So other people are doubting you, and you're able to say, I still trust my intuition, I still trust my facts, but I'm going to let you have your doubtings. I'm going to allow you to have your own opinions and thoughts, and kind of allow that exchange of ideas without starting to doubt other people and and not let them have their opinions. And so again, it's you in relation to other people. When other people do this, like doubt you, can you still stay true to yourself? Or when others are not staying calm and blaming you, can you still stay calm and not blame yourself even? And if you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about by others, don't deal in lies, or being hated, we could say, by others, don't give way to hating. So again, it's this you in relation to other people. And he wants the father wants the son to have very specific characteristics here. It doesn't quite show up as very specific list of characteristics in the other stanzas, but you can see that this is like calm. And this could be like kind or trusting or just like being honorable and letting other people have their say, being understanding, and then having patience, waiting. And when people lie about you being honest and having integrity and not lie about them, or and you're kind of tired of waiting, you're tired of being lied about, and you wait and you're able to be patient through the lies. And it's like if you can wait and not be tired of being hated, and then not give way to it as well as others are. So, and saying, just being kind and having integrity and having patience and being calm. And then lastly, I like this part. It's, don't look too good or talk too wise. That might sound like don't like put on fancy suits and be sassy, but it's not really what he's saying. It's more of like being humble and being modest. And instead of being like, wow, I stay calm and I am kind and patient and I have integrity and I am awesome. So it's kind of the also not just going around and believing that you're too good for everyone else, just because you can do these things. And so that's kind of the other part of it. It's like if other people are just going around talking about how great they are and being extremely proud in the obnoxious way, can you still maintain a sort of like humble modesty and not put off others with like your pride and believing that you're too good to be with them or things like that. So really this paragraph, I would say, if we were kind of trying to give it a loose topic, would be trusting yourself in spite of others. Because I really think this is about, like trusting yourself and keeping your head, and trusting yourself and being patient and when others are lying or hating you, or doubting you, and you just trust yourself and know that like that you are right, and in the end it will work out. And so there's a sense of you in relation to others, and can you be upstanding when others aren't, in this stanza. And then the next several stanzas, it kind of moves back into this idea of you in relation to others when we get to the bottom. But these two stanzas are more about you inside yourself when things get hard, because we do deal with people every day, but we deal with ourselves all of the time. And so this is kind of like, how do you deal with yourself? And just kind of that inner battles that are in the next two stanzas. So, if you can dream and not make dreams your master, so not just daydream, be a man of action, woman of action. If you can think and not make thoughts your aim, so kind of the person who plans and has like all of the ideas but never the follow through to get the plan done. So not just let it be in your head, not just the dreaming and the thinking, but be a man of action. Just like is kind of mimics, these two lines kind of mimic each other, because they're about being a man of action and stepping out of the thoughts and dreams and taking a plan. And then in the next stanza we get that he says, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss kind of being like horseshoes or a game of skill and chance. So you have to pitch and have the skill, but it's also the idea of that it's like there are so many factors that go in. Like if you're playing sports, like you could be the best quarterback, you could be the best pitcher, but there are lots of factors that go in. Like who you're pitching to, who's catching the ball, what's the win. So it is skill, but there's also this element of it's not just you, and it's a little bit of chance as well. And so it's kind of, these both are going along these lines of, can you take a risk? Can you make your thoughts into actions? Be a man of action. And so those kind of mimic each other. Now, the next couple of these all kind of work together. And so it's saying, you need to be a man of action. And then if you meet with triumph and disaster, can you treat those two imposters just the same? Which, We want to say, oh, well, I triumphed and I won the game. I'm really proud of myself. Can't I be proud of myself? Well, yes, of course. But he's saying it's fleeting. Like, just like all of the troubles in our life can eventually go away, they still might mark us, right? Just as, triumphs might make us proud. But he's saying, can you look at both of them as something that is fleeting? And there's the next thing that you have to get to. We can't just rest on our laurels, as they say, or just kind of like stare at our trophies and think about all of the great things we've done and not move on and do greater things and try different things. And likewise, that might sound sad, like, oh, can I be happy that I won? Well, yes, of course you can. And then you have to move on. But it becomes a little bit more of an uplifting conversation. It's like, oh my gosh, I failed. And then it's, oh, yes, you did. Own that. And then let's move on. And so, kind of that sort of balanced idea of both of these things can be really fleeting and feel them in the moment, but know that they're fleeting. They're imposters. They're not something that you can base your entire life off of, and keep moving on, kind of keep being a man of action or a woman of action. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves, or kind of dishonest man would be probably the best way to say that, or joker, twisted by knaves and made a trap for fools. So I feel like this goes a lot with like the don't, being lied about and don't deal in lies. It's like you tell somebody something and then it's like gossip. You explain something to someone, and then perhaps they misunderstand you or intentionally twist what you say. And then they go and tell other people. And then you have to deal with some kind of consequences and bear through it and deal with that, because this whole situation got twisted in a sort of gossip way, and move on from it. He's saying, you bear it and you move on. Like, this is that disaster that he's talking about that you move on from. And then with that same idea, because this is the same if statement of dealing with like disasters like gossip and people um, twisting your words. And then, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop, so bend over and build them up with worn out tools. So can you kind of, it goes back to the idea down here that we he keeps going with this idea in the third stanza, and you lose all of your winnings and start at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. I feel like these two kind of go together, these two ideas. So you have something, you loved it, and now perhaps the words of people have broken it, and you just have to step over and pick it up and start again, and never breathe a word about your loss. That's kind of that sort of grit, that sort of stoicism of not complaining. It's not just dealing with it, but it's like not complaining. And so again, we just talked about the sort of pitch and toss, which is this idea of being a man of action. But then once you lose, and lose, that's the big statement, and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss and not complain. And then if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew, so kind of muscles, I like to think about this as more like heart and soul and body, like, because the nerves are kind of like in Victorian ways, like women could have like nervous conditions where they get like very, very fluttered and not know what to do, is kind of like this restlessness. And they kind of thought about nerves as kind of like our feelings that, and so it could be kind of taken as it's like heart and soul kind of all in here, and then like our body. And it says, if you can force like every single part of you to serve your turn. So, like, serve your goal would probably be a good way to rephrase that long after they're gone. So, your mind and spirit and soul have given up, and so has your body. Like, they are gone. And so hold on when there is nothing in you. And again, kind of mimicking that idea that was right there. They are gone and there is nothing in you. All pieces of you. It's over. Except the will. There's just something in you, that kind of cowboy grit, we could call it, which says, hold on, like it's not over. I'm not stopping. I can't be broken. That sort of that attitude. And again, these kind of mimicking those ideas. I feel like the second and the third stanza uh, kind of this introduces the idea of dealing with triumph and disaster, and then the next several stanzas are just about how do you deal with the difficulties of life, and you deal with them by not stopping, and you keep going, and when it goes badly, because it inevitably will, that's where you see someone's character, which is what this poem is about. It's about what is his son's character like, and is he going to be able to hold on when it feels like all hope is lost. Because then it's like I feel like the author is almost like saying that that's you winning just by holding on, even though you lost everything. You not giving up, that is winning. If you can talk to crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch. And so this is kind of transitioning. It's going to be like these 4 lines to be a little bit more about you in relation to others, kind of like we had in that first stanza. And then this last stanza, I feel like goes back to our ideas that were in the second and the third stanza of how that you deal with life. And so we kind of have almost all of the ideas rolled into one in a summary stanza here at the bottom, where it's like here we have what was in the first stanza, and then down here we have what was in the second and third. So if you can walk with crowds and keep your virtue. So are you going to become everyone else? That's kind of like that means keep your virtue. Like think about all of the virtues that we had up here about being calm and being patient and having integrity, kindness and understanding and humility. Are you going to, when you're with others and you're in crowds and you feel peer pressure, are you going to keep your character? And or when you walk with kings and important people, are you going to, nor lose the common touch? Are you going to be able to talk to everyone, be everyone's friend? Because we get this idea of like all men can count on you, whether they're kings and important people or common ordinary people. Can you talk to everyone and be their friends? And this almost gets into, I feel like, a topic of leadership. Like you're able to be with people and be yourself, and you're able to relate to all. And if neither foe nor loving friends can hurt you, again, this is kind of that stoicism of that stiff upper lip of it's like I have my friends, I have my foes, but I am myself, and it neither one can move me or hurt me, because I have this sense of character and self that is immovable. And then if all men count with you, but none too much. So this is again maybe getting onto this idea of leadership. The men can count on you, like in a group project, like you're going to do your part, but none too much. Like you're not going to do everyone else's work, because you know that means that you are causing them a little bit of a downfall, because then they aren't being honest because they're not getting their work done, and they're not able to have these virtues. They're not able to trust themselves if they're not getting things done. So you let men count on you, and you have your friends. You can relate to everyone, but you don't just let people take advantage of you. And you're able to make sure that others don't lose themselves, just as you don't lose yourself. So it's kind of sense of not only you in relation to others, but you maybe perhaps even helping others. And so, if you can feel the unforgiving minute, and so again, we're kind of transitioning into some of these what happens when disaster, because we have this unforgiving minute here. So it's like the disasters, like we have something bad happening, that unforgiving minute, and you say, okay, I've got like something bad happening, and I'm just gonna like I'm gonna run this through. I'm gonna run it out. I've got 1 minute, and so I'm gonna give it a minute. That sort of idea up here of it's like stooping down and building it up and making it happen. If you can do this, then all the earth is yours and everything that's in it. And so he's saying you're going to gain, perhaps this is even saying this is a way to, be healthy, wealthy, and wise, as Benjamin Franklin would say. This is your way to, to gain things and to gain success. And then last line, very telling. And which is more? So what is more than gaining possessions and gaining success? It is that you will be a man, my son. And so he is saying if you can overcome those unforgiving minutes of life, you'll be successful. And he's even saying perhaps you'll have like not just success, but it's a good way to get money. It's to keep going and to keep working, right? Um, and by saying more than that, you'll be a man because we're talking about character here. And I think this author is more um, worried about his son as he grows up having the character and being able to deal with the pitfalls of life then I mean here he kind of mentions like success and perhaps even possessions, but more importantly it's really the character, and that's what this poem is about. And so what I'd like you guys to do for your own analysis is each stanza of the poem has a loose topic, which we talked about in the video. Explain the topics of each stanza and why you think that is the topic. So go through, and for each stanza, and perhaps the last stanza almost has two different topics. But tell me what is kind of the loose topic, the loose theme, message perhaps of each stanza. Why do you think that is? You can use a quote if that makes the most sense, like use the most powerful quote in that stanza to tell me, like, this is how I knew what the topic was. And then you can also tell me if you think the advice in each stanza is valuable to you. We are not British. We are not living in 1895, and so I don't know how well you would relate to this idea of British Stoicism. In fact, it stands maybe perhaps in contrast to a lot of things that we would say, not just like grin and bear it, but we also believe in let's like talk through this and let some of those things out so they don't fester. So you can also tell me like how valuable do you think the information is, and if you want to tell me you like disagree with some specific lines, you can. So bonus for extra credit, the amount of points that I give you would depend on how good it is. If you want to write at least 4 poetic lines in the style of Kipling's poem, if you want to write more, you go for it. I know some of you just like our poetry, and I am not. So I feel like 4, like even I could do that. It doesn't have to rhyme or be an iambic pentameter because that would be really hard. But it would be really great. Like more points, seriously, if it isn't. If you're like writing an iambic pentameter, you better tell me that you are because I probably won't notice it. And I'll be very impressed if you do. But yeah, that can be some points for extra credit. So uh, I will go ahead and uh, go to this part. So if you want to think about that question and do one last read for yourself, put it all together for your analysis, that would be great. Bye, guys.